hand to a back as good as Brandon Bolden.
And we obviously think that he's their workhorse. He's going to be their stud back this year. And if nothing else, he's going to carry the ball for 1,000+ yards just because they don't have any really other weapons that we know of.
Exactly. And the thing is that quarterback, whoever it may be, whether it be Mackey, Stout, or Brunetti, that quarterback just has to make a completion on second down, has to make a completion key third down. Maybe a play action pass on first down, just to show that they can make a completion, just so this guy doesn't have 8, 9, 10 guys in the box, all over him, so he can get some running lanes, don't you think?
Yeah, and one thing that plays in their favor is a veteran offensive line. They've got 5 of the returners on the offensive line, the Hog Mollies up front, coming back, and hopefully they're going to be able to give Mackey a little bit of protection.
Yeah, and he doesn't need a lot. He just needs 4 or 5 seconds to find a receiver. Nobody's open, he's taking off, So he doesn't need a whole lot of time. He just needs enough, pick up a blitz type of protection. So I'm looking forward to seeing this team, if they can make it through the SEC with maybe 2 or 3 wins. It's going to be really tough for them because they are playing the SEC, but at least they have a lot of prospects in the backfield with Bolden and also a man named Jeff Scott.
Yeah, Jeff Scott reminds us a lot of Dexter McCluster, the heralded all-purpose player from Ole Miss a couple of years ago. Specifically, it's ingrained in my memory, Dexter McCluster running all over Tennessee. I still don't think they've caught him yet from that game a couple of years ago down at the Grove. But he's going to be their all-purpose guy, kind of the X factor on their team.
It's hard to forget that, I think he almost hit 300 yards that day. He really drove a lot of the Vol fans around us crazy that day. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And I like when you have that change of pace. You have a bruiser that can go in there and run between the tackles, but then you have a guy that can get outside and really burn you down the sidelines.
Hey, it works. We've seen it in the NFL with Tiki Barber, Brandon Jacobs. Seen it with McFadden and Jones at Arkansas just a few years back, and we've even seen it as most recently with Alabama, Trent Richardson and Mark Ingram.
Yeah, and it's really going to pay dividends if those guys can get off to a good start. And I think Ole Miss really is going to just play a lot of ball control because their defense is a little beaten up right now and young. And they want to keep that offense on the field as long as they can, don't you think?
Yeah, and another question mark at Ole Miss, you're going to have a lot of freshmen, a lot of underclassmen playing early in the wideouts and in the receiving corps. We look at Melvin Harris. I mean, he looks like he's going to be the guy, kind of a Randy Moss type player. He's tall, go up and catch the big ball. But so far, he's not been consistent for them. Jameis Logan is their most consistent playmaker, and I guess that's really what Houston Nutt's banking is that Jameis Logan's going to come into his own in 2011.
Yeah, I think you'll see him a lot in the inside, maybe the slot top guy, and getting open over in the middle, alleviate some pressure off Mackey if he can consistently get open. Yeah, you want Harris on the outside running down the sideline because he's going to just out-jump everybody. But the thing is where there is a void there in the wide receiver that gives great opportunity to these guys. And I think those guys, those 5 freshmen coming in, they just need to work as hard as they can and move up the depth chart. And there's a lot of possibility for them to contribute right away.
The defense, young.
Yeah,
I guess
young.
That's the one word that you can use to characterize them. They're thin at defensive line, but they got a couple of defensive ends that could help them. One of those guys that we were looking at a little bit earlier is Kentrell Lockett. Granted a 6-year of eligibility by the NCAA and is returning from an ACL tear, and he's kind of that locker room presence that the Ole Miss Rebels need.
Yeah, that guy has been there before, has been in the battles of the SEC because, it's such a physical game. The football is a physical game in nature. But the SEC, it just takes it to another level. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have depth on defense, you won't survive in the SEC. And that's something, unfortunately, that Ole Miss is facing this year. And they're really going to have to overcome that. And it's going to be tough, and that's why the offense needs to play a more of a ball control type style, so that their defense and lack thereof of quality depth doesn't have to be on the field 35, 40 minutes a game.
Especially against some of the offenses that they're going to face.
Exactly, and a lot of the West is there's a lot of passing offenses, but there's a lot of bruising offenses too. Alabama, Auburn, and LSU. So, which actually, this year, Alabama, like that I mentioned them, Alabama and LSU are at the Grove this year, and Arkansas comes to the Grove. So, you think upset alert for those guys?
Maybe, and we'll get to that in just a few minutes. I definitely think it might be that young team that just needs the confidence. Maybe if they can get a couple of wins early on in their schedule against some of the lower profile names, maybe that can spark them to turn it up a notch when it comes to SEC play. We obviously think that their big name, C.J. Johnson at linebacker, maybe a Patrick Willis type player for Houston Nutt, who knows? But he's a very highly touted prospect at linebacker and somebody that might be able to start right away.
Yeah, I think they're going to depend on him to come in and almost start immediately, whether it be inside or outside linebacker. Seems like he can fill either spot. So very interesting. It's so tough for freshmen to come in and play in the SEC right away because, they don't have that experience. They don't have that. They're still growing into their bodies, and it's gonna be tough for them. So I feel for him, but he's so good. Maybe he can be a star in the making right away.
Obviously, the secondary is going to be the problem for the Ole Miss Rebels. 8 teams scored 30-plus points against them last year. Don't really see that stat changing much this year.
Nah, it's going to be, like I said, if their offense is going to have to carry this team, and if their offense can hold the ball, maybe it can come down a little bit, but it looks like it's going to be in the same pattern this year.
So now we're going to predict LSU or Ole Miss schedule. Getting ahead of myself with LSU there, but before we go into that, this is a big year for Houston Nutt. After the 2 huge seasons to get Ole Miss faithful back up and going, this seems like it's a year where he's really got to prove something, does it not?
I think he at least has to make a bowl bid. I mean, it's the fans are getting tired like already, Just 1 year of a losing season can really turn it sour real fast. So, what do you think? What do you expect out of this team, Adam?
Well, I'm looking at 3 wins. In just a few moments, I'll let Jared count down their schedule and everything, and we'll look at them in depth. But I think that they have the potential, like I said, to maybe knock off a program early on and get some momentum heading into the big schedule of the SEC West. Who knows? From the SEC East, they've got Kentucky, they've got Georgia, and Vanderbilt.
They could possibly win 2 of those.
2 out of 3 of those games are pretty reasonable to think they could steal a victory there.
They'll at least be in them,
Right. And they were in some games last year. But go ahead and count their schedule down for us, and we'll let the listeners know what we think they're going to end up at in 2011.
All right. They start off their season September 3rd against BYU. I'm predicting a loss there, but they'll bounce back with Southern Illinois with a win. At Vandy, I got them with a loss. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Sorry to all you Ole Miss fans out there. But yeah, at Vandy with a loss. Georgia at home with a loss. At Fresno State with a loss. Alabama at home, loss. Arkansas at home, loss. At Auburn with a loss. At Kentucky with a loss. Louisiana Tech, you're going to get a win there. LSU at home with a loss, and then at Mississippi State with a loss as well.
So that's 7 losses in a row at one point.
Yeah.
Tough times on the Grove.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. They might have a lot of spirits rolling around.
The one game that I think that they might be able to steal, Auburn, even though it's away, we look at Auburn. They're not going to have Cam Newton this year, obviously. They're going to have a defensive unit that was susceptible to some big plays last year.
Yeah.
I think that they might be able to steal it. One Achilles heel there is it's at Auburn.
Right.
Let's look at it. They got Alabama at home, Arkansas at home, LSU at home. You got to think that if you're an Ole Miss fan, you're going to be able to steal one of those games.
Yeah, you would. If you're an optimistic Ole Miss fan, you think you're gonna at least win one of those. You're not a fan if you don't think that, especially at home. So I don't see it happening, but it doesn't mean it can't happen.
Absolutely. So. We saw them knock off the Mighty Gators just a few years ago, and nobody saw that coming. So.
Nah, that's for sure.
You're listening to Through the Rec Specs.